My nephew's laughter echoed as he called me the family wallet, a nickname my sister-in-law coined. They thought I was oblivious. I wasn't. I smiled, unlocked my phone, and silently canceled every bill I paid for them, starting with the dinner we were eating. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss the fallout. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. I was tired. That was the only word that could truly encompass the heaviness in my bones. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion of a 60-hour work week as a creative director, nor was it the lingering fatigue from the flu I had battled just 2 weeks prior. It was a deeper, spiritual kind of tired. It was the exhaustion of being the strong one, the reliable one, the one who never said no, because saying no felt like abandoning people who couldn't swim on their own. I sat at the head of the table at Le Jardin, the most expensive French bistro in the city. It was my 52nd birthday. The tablecloth was a crisp, blinding white, the silverware heavy and polished to a mirror finish. Across from me sat my brother, David, looking vaguely uncomfortable in a suit I had bought him for his last interview, an interview he hadn't gotten. Next to him was his wife, Monica, looking radiant and sharp, her fingers drumming on the stem of a wine glass filled with a vintage Pinot Noir that cost more than my first car payment. And then there was Leo, my 12-year-old nephew, currently ignoring his escargot to tap furiously on a brand new tablet. A tablet I had purchased. "Happy birthday, Aubrey," Monica chirped, her voice pitching up in that performative way she used when she wanted the waiter to notice us. She raised her glass. "To another year of success. We are so proud of you." I smiled, though it didn't quite reach my eyes. "Thank you, Monica. It's nice to just sit down honestly." "Oh, I bet," she said, taking a sip. "David was saying you've been working late every night. You really should take a break. Maybe a trip. We were thinking of going to Cabo in the spring. Maybe you could maybe you could join us." The slip was subtle, barely a stutter, but I heard it. I always heard it. "Cabo sounds nice," David muttered, not meeting my eyes. He was attacking his steak with unnecessary ferocity. "But maybe we should let Aubrey relax tonight, moan." "I am relaxing," I said, taking a sip of water. My throat still felt raw from the flu. "I'm just happy to spend time with you all. It's been a while." "Well, we're happy to be here," Monica beamed. "And the food, exquisite. Leo, put the tablet down, honey. It's Aunt Aubrey's birthday." Leo sighed, the dramatic, world-ending sigh of a preteen, and slammed the cover of the tablet shut. He looked at me, his eyes bright with that unfiltered, dangerous honesty that only children possess. He didn't look malicious, just bored and filled with information he didn't have the filter to process. "Mom said you were paying," Leo said. "It wasn't a question." The table went quiet for a fraction of a second. Monica laughed, a tinkling, nervous sound. "Of course Aunt Aubrey is treating us, Leo. It's a celebration." "Yeah," Leo continued, grinning now, looking around the table for approval. "That's what you said in the car. You said we can order whatever cause Uncle David is broke, but Aunt Aubrey is the family wallet." The air left the room. It felt as if the entire restaurant had been vacuum sealed. I froze. My hand, halfway to my bread plate, hovered in midair. I looked at David. He turned a shade of crimson that matched the wine. I looked at Monica. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes hardened, a flash of annoyance directed at her son, not for the sentiment, but for the timing. "Leo, that is a joke," Monica said quickly, reaching out to pat his arm. "We were just joking about how generous Aunt Aubrey is. You know how Mommy has silly nicknames." Leo looked confused. "But you said it on the phone to Grandma, too. You said, 'Don't worry about the tuition. The wallet is coming over for dinner. I'll grease the wheels.'" What does grease the wheels mean? Silence, absolute ringing silence. I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw David, shrinking into his collar, unable to defend me. I saw Monica, her mask slipping, revealing the calculation beneath the charm. And I saw Leo, innocent in his cruelty, merely repeating the gospel he had been raised on. They didn't see me. They didn't see Aubrey, the sister, the aunt, the woman who had worked herself into the ground to ensure they never felt the cold sting of poverty. They saw a resource, a utility, a wallet. Monica let out a breathless laugh, waving her hand dismissively. "Oh, kids, they say the darndest things, don't they? Aubrey, you know how much we appreciate you. Don't pay any attention to that." As she looked at David, and then, to my horror, they both chuckled. It was a nervous, "let's move past this" chuckle, but it was laughter nonetheless. They were laughing off the fact that my entire existence had been reduced to an ATM transaction. Something inside me, something that had been holding on tight for decades, finally snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was quiet, like a thread finally giving way under too much weight. The betrayal wasn't just in the name, it was in the laughter. It was worse than the diagnosis itself. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage, but my face remained perfectly smooth. I had spent 30 years in corporate boardrooms, negotiating with sharks who wanted to strip my department for parts. I knew how to wear a mask. "Of course," I said softly, my voice was steady. Eerie, even. Kids do say the funniest things. I picked up my fork and took a bite of the salad I hadn't tasted yet. It tasted like ash. I chewed slowly, forcing the mechanics of eating to continue while my mind raced at 1,000 miles per hour. The family wallet. The words burned. They seared through every memory of the last 10 years. I thought of the late nights I stayed up helping David with his resume. I thought of the time I drove 3 hours in a snowstorm because Monica had a flat tire and didn't trust tow truck drivers. I thought of the private school tuition checks I signed every semester for Leo because Monica insisted the public schools weren't nurturing enough. I looked at Monica. She had recovered now, believing the crisis averted. She was signaling the waiter for another bottle of wine. "Let's get the 2018, she was saying, pointing at the list. "Aubrey loves a good Cabernet." She didn't know I preferred Merlot. She never had known. A coldness spread through my chest, replacing the hurt. It was a clarifying, icy sensation. I felt the physical distress of my illness fading, replaced by a surge of adrenaline. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. "Checking work emails?" David asked, trying to sound jovial, trying to normalize the atmosphere. "Always on the grind, eh, Aubrey?" "Something like that," I said. I unlocked the screen. The brightness hurt my eyes for a moment, but I focused. I opened my banking app first. I saw the pending transaction for the deposit on this dinner. I saw the recurring transfer scheduled for the first of the month, David's car payment. I saw the secondary transfer for Monica's allowance, which we politely called a consulting fee, for helping me with errands she never actually ran. I tapped the screen, cancel recurring transfer, confirm. I looked up. Monica was laughing at something Leo said, feeding him a piece of bread. They looked like a happy family, a family I had purchased. I went to the Verizon app. I was the account holder. David, Monica, and Leo were all authorized lines on my unlimited data plan, the premium one, because Monica complained about throttling. I selected David's line, suspend service. I selected Monica's line, suspend service. I selected Leo's line, suspend service. I didn't hit confirm just yet. I wanted to wait for the perfect moment. Next, the insurance app. The family SUV, a massive beast of a vehicle that Monica needed for safety, was under my name for the insurance discount, though they drove it. I navigated to the policy. Remove vehicle. I worked silently, my thumb hovering over buttons that would dismantle their entire infrastructure. It was terrifying how easy it was. Years of building them up, decades of support, all controlled by a few pixels on a screen. "Are you okay, Aubrey?" Monica asked, pausing her monologue about her upcoming yoga retreat. "You seem quiet." "I'm just thinking," I said, offering her a small, tight smile, "about how right Leo is." "Oh, stop," she waved her hand. "He's a child, he doesn't understand finances." No, I said, my thumb hovering over the disconnect button on the streaming services bundle next. I think he understands them perfectly, better than any of us. Monica frowned, a flicker of unease passing over her face. She sensed a shift in the wind, but she couldn't identify the storm. She thought she was dealing with Aubrey the doormat, Aubrey the savior. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. A wallet is an inanimate object. It doesn't have feelings. But the person holding the wallet, she can choose to close it. To understand why this moment was so shattering, you have to understand the history. I am 12 years older than David. When our parents died in a car accident when I was 25 and he was 13, I didn't just become his sister. I became his mother, his father, and his bank. I dropped out of my master's program to work full-time so he wouldn't have to change schools. I paid for his college. I paid for his first apartment. When he met Monica, I paid for the engagement ring because he wanted it to be perfect, but didn't have the credit score. I had sacrificed my own relationships, my own dreams of travel, and even my own retirement savings in the early years just to make sure David had a soft landing. I told myself it was what family did. I told myself he would do the same for me. Then came Monica. Monica didn't work. She had a degree in art history that she never used, describing herself as a domestic curator. When they first married, she was sweet, deferential. She called me for advice on cooking, on decorating. But as the years went on, the sweetness calcified into expectation. She was a master of the backhanded compliment. "Oh, Aubrey, I love that blazer, it's so sensible. I could never wear off the rack, my skin is just too sensitive to synthetic blends." She was beautiful in a high-maintenance, polished way, hair always blown out, nails always done, clothes always brand new. And she was dangerous because she knew exactly where my weak spots were. She knew I felt guilty for being single and childless. She knew I viewed Leo as the child I never had. "Leo needs this camp," she would say, her eyes wide and pleading. "All his friends are going. I'd hate for him to feel left out just because David's commission check was low this month. You know how cruel kids can be." And I would write the check, always. Tonight, sitting across from her, the veil lifted. I watched her swirl that expensive wine I was paying for, and saw the predator beneath the foundation. She leaned in, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "So, Aubrey, about that Cabo trip. I was looking at villas, and there's one that has a private chef. It's a little over budget, but I figured since you've had such a good year at the agency." She trailed off, leaving the implication hanging there like a hook. She wasn't asking, she was informing me of the bill I would be receiving. "A private chef," I repeated, my voice flat. "Well, you know David has his dietary restrictions," she said smoothly, adjusting her diamond tennis bracelet, my Christmas gift to her 3 years ago. "And honestly, you look like you need the pampering. You look, well, tired, old tired." She smiled when she said it, as if she were doing me a favor by pointing out my exhaustion. That was Monica. She would insult you, pick your pocket, and make you thank her for the attention all in the same breath. She had spent years isolating David from his friends, making him dependent on her approval, and by extension, dependent on my money to buy that approval. I looked at David. He was staring at his plate, purposefully avoiding the conversation. He knew what she was doing. He always knew, and he let it happen because it was easier than fighting her. He was an accomplice through cowardice. I looked back at my phone. I had the cancel page for the credit card they were all authorized users on, the card, currently sitting in the waiter's folder at the register to pay for this meal. Monica took a bite of her lobster. "So, what do you think, Cabo?" "I think," I said, tapping the screen to lock the card instantly, "that Cabo is lovely this time of year." I looked up at her, my eyes meeting hers. For the first time in years, I didn't blink. I didn't look away. I saw the confusion flicker in her gaze. She was waiting for the yes. She was waiting for the transfer. She had no idea that the woman sitting across from her wasn't her banker anymore. She was her judge, jury, and executioner. The waiter returned, a young man with a polite smile that masked his exhaustion. He placed the dessert menu in front of Monica with a flourish. "Our pastry chef has prepared a special chocolate soufflé this evening," he said. "It takes 20 minutes to prepare, but it is exquisite." "Oh, we have time," Monica said, waving her hand airily. She didn't look at me. She didn't ask if I had time. She didn't ask if I needed to get home to rest after my illness. She simply assumed that my time, like my money, was hers to spend. "We'll take 3, and another round of coffees, cappuccinos." "Make it 4 soufflés," Leo added, not looking up from his phone. "And a hot chocolate." "Of course," the waiter said, jotting it down. I watched him walk away. 20 minutes. That was exactly enough time. I looked down at the bag sitting by my feet. Inside was a heavy, slate-gray gift box. I had brought it with the best of intentions. Inside that box was a binder, color-coded, tabbed, and meticulously organized. It was a financial wellness plan I had spent 3 weeks putting together for them. It contained a budget, a debt repayment strategy, and an offer to match their savings for a house down payment if they stuck to the plan for 6 months. I had wrapped it in a ribbon, thinking I was giving them the gift of a future. Now, I realized I was just giving them more rope. I reached down, unzipped my bag, and pulled out the permanent marker I kept for marking up proofs at the office. I slid the box onto my lap, hid. Den by the tablecloth. With steady hands, I took the ribbon off. I opened the box and pulled out the savings match offer certificate, a piece of paper worth $50,000 of my hard-earned money. I crumbled it into a tight ball and shoved it into my pocket. Then I closed the box. I took the marker and wrote 3 words on the smooth gray lid. The ink was black, bold, and final. "Figure it out." I put the marker away and placed the box back in my bag, ready for the drop. But I wasn't done tapping. I unlocked my phone again. The screen was my command center, and I was launching a silent nuclear strike. I navigated to the family plan for the streaming services: Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, HBO, Spotify Family. I saw the user profiles. Monica, David, Leo, the Queen, that was Monica's profile name on my Netflix account, a joke that suddenly felt nauseating. I didn't just sign out of devices. I changed the password to a random string of alphanumeric gibberish I would never remember. Then I canceled the subscription entirely. Netflix canceled, Hulu canceled, Spotify canceled. I imagined the silence that would fall over their house tomorrow. No music, no movies, just the sound of their own shallow conversations. Then I moved to the big one, the one that would hurt. Amazon Prime. I pulled up the order history. It was a scroll of gluttony, high-end espresso machine, designer yoga mats, a drone for Leo, a set of copper cookware, all ordered in the last month. All charged to the family household card, which auto-paid from my checking account. I went to manage household. I saw David and Monica listed as teens, essentially, adults with purchasing power but no responsibility. Remove adult Monica. Remove adult David. A warning popped up. Are you sure? This will remove their access to Prime benefits and the shared wallet immediately. I didn't hesitate. Confirm. I watched the names disappear from the list. It was cleaner now, just me. I checked the time. 5 minutes had passed. "Aubrey, you're being dreadfully boring tonight," Monica said, leaning back and stretching her arms. "Put the phone away. We're celebrating you. Oh, did I tell you? I found this amazing interior designer for the living room. I was thinking we could put the consultation fee on the card just to get the ball rolling. It's only $500. Only $500, I repeated. My voice was a monotone hum. "Ideally, we'd do the remodel before the holidays," she continued, oblivious. "I want to host Christmas this year, but obviously I can't do it with the current drapes. They're tragic." "Tragic," I echoed. I opened my email. I found the confirmation for the car insurance policy I had adjusted earlier, but I needed to go further. I opened the app for the toll road pass, the Easy Pass transponder that was stuck to the windshield of their SUV. The one I refilled automatically whenever it hit 0. Report transponder lost stolen. Deactivate immediately. The next time they drove through a toll booth, the arm wouldn't lift. Or worse, they'd breeze through and rack up fines they couldn't pay. I looked at David. He was picking at his cuticles, looking anxious. He knew something was wrong. He was my brother. He knew my silences. He knew the difference between a tired silence and a calculating silence. "Aubrey," he said quietly, "is everything okay at work? You seem distant." "Work is fine, David," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "Work is the one place where people actually do what they're paid to do." He flinched. He knew, but he was too afraid of Monica to ask the follow-up question. I had one last app to open, my estate planning portal. I had a revocable living trust. David was the primary beneficiary. If I died tomorrow, he got the house, the retirement accounts, the life insurance, everything. I logged in with Face ID. I navigated to beneficiaries. Edit. I deleted David's name. The screen asked for a new beneficiary. I paused. I didn't have anyone else. No secret lover, no children, just me. I typed in the name of the animal shelter where I had adopted my cat 3 years ago. Paws and Claws Rescue Foundation. Percentage, 100%. Save changes. It was done. I was worth more dead than alive to them 10 minutes ago. Now, I was worth nothing to them either way. I slipped the phone into my purse. The soufflés were still 15 minutes away. "I need to use the restroom," I said, standing up. I grabbed my purse. "Hurry back," Monica chirped. "Don't want the chocolate to fall." I picked up the gray box from the floor. "Oh, is that for us?" Leo asked, eyeing the box greedily. "Is it the PS5? "No, Leo," I said, my voice incredibly calm. "It's something much more valuable." I walked around the table. I placed the box directly in the center, right between the salt shaker and the expensive bottle of wine. The words "figure it out" faced David. "I'm not going to the restroom," I said. Monica frowned, her wine glass halt. Ing halfway to her mouth. "What?" "I'm leaving," I said. "But dessert," Monica sputtered. "And the bill, you haven't paid the bill." I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had worn all night. It felt sharp. "No," I said, "I haven't." I turned on my heel and walked toward the exit. I didn't run. I didn't look back. I heard Monica's voice rise in a confused, shrill pitch. "Aubrey, Aubrey," but I kept walking. I walked past the host stand, out the heavy oak doors, and into the cool night air. I felt lighter, 50 pounds lighter. I sat in my car in the parking lot, the engine idling. I wasn't leaving yet. I needed to see it. I needed to witness the moment the reality hit them, even if it was just from a distance. I had parked across the street, with a clear view of the restaurant's large front windows. I could see their table. I saw Monica gesturing wildly, pointing at the door I had just exited. I saw David with his head in his hands. Leo was poking the box I had left. Then the waiter arrived. He was holding the black leather folder with the bill. He placed it on the table. I watched Monica pick it up. She didn't even look at it. She just pulled out the credit card, the platinum card that had my name on the front and her name as an authorized user. She handed it to the waiter with a dismissive flick of her wrist. I checked my phone. The notification came through instantly from my banking app. Transaction declined. Lejardin. Amount, $487.50. Reason, card locked by user. I watched the waiter walk to the terminal at the server station. He swiped. He paused. He frowned. He swiped again. He looked at the card, wiped the strip on his apron, and swiped a third time. He walked back to the table. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew the script. "I'm sorry, ma'am, the card was declined." I saw Monica's face turn a shade of violent red even from 50 yards away. She snatched the card back, typed something into her phone. likely trying to log into the banking app I had just locked her out of, and then began digging through her purse for another card. She pulled out the backup Visa, the emergency-only card. Transaction declined. Lejardin, reason, card canceled. I watched the panic set in. It was a physical transformation. Monica's posture collapsed. She turned to David. He patted his pockets, pulling out his wallet. He handed over his debit card. I knew the balance of that account. It had $42 in it until the first of the month. The waiter came back. He shook his head. Now the manager was approaching. The situation was happening. Arms were waving. David looked like he was about to vomit. Monica was pointing at the gray box on the table, then at the door, seemingly trying to blame the invisible aunt who had vanished. My phone started to buzz. Incoming call, Monica. Incoming call, David. Incoming call, Monica. I watched the screen light up the dark interior of my car. I let it ring. Then a text from Monica. What the hell is going on? CARDS aren't working. Come back and pay this bill now. This is embarrassing. Another text. AUBREY, answer your phone. They are threatening to call the police. I laughed. A dry, harsh sound. The police? For a dinner bill? No, they would just take their information and mail them a summons or make them wash dishes. Or, more likely, Monica would have to call her mother, a woman she despised, to wire them money. I put the car in drive. As I pulled away, my phone rang again. This time I answered. Hello, I said, my voice calm. Aubrey, Monica screamed. It was a guttural, feral sound. Have you lost your mind? The cards are dead, all of them. We are sitting here like criminals. Get back here right now. No, I said. What do you mean no? She shrieked. We ordered soufflés, we have a bill, you invited us. Actually, I corrected her, you invited yourselves, and as for the cards, the family wallet is closed, Monica. Permanently. What are you talking about? She was hyperventilating now. Is this about the joke? The stupid joke Leo made? You're ruining your own birthday over a joke. It wasn't a joke, I said. It was the truth, and the truth is expensive. David is crying, Aubrey. Crying? How could you do this to your brother? Tell David to open the box, I said. The box, the stupid gray box. Open it, I commanded, and tell him to read the ledger on page 1. Goodbye, Monica. Wait, you can't just. I hung up, then I blocked her number. I blocked David, I blocked Leo. I drove home in silence, the city lights blurring past me. For the first time in 10 years, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like peace. The next morning, I woke up without an alarm. The sun was streaming through my bedroom window, a room I realized I hadn't properly enjoyed in years because I was always rushing out the door to fund someone else's life. I didn't go to work. I had months of accumulated PTO. I called my assistant and told her I was taking a personal leave. Emergency family sabbatical, I called it. Then the real work began. I sat at my dining room table, a cup of coffee in hand, and opened my laptop. It was time to do the forensic accounting I should have done 5 years ago. I had hired a private investigator forensic accountant named Mr. Henderson earlier that morning. I sent him the authorization to dig into the public records associated with David and Monica, and I gave him access to the joint accounts I had just closed to trace where the money had actually gone. By noon, the preliminary report was in my inbox. It was worse than I thought. I knew about the clothes and the dinners. I expected that. What I didn't expect was the gambling. There were withdrawals from ATM machines at a local casino, categorized in my head as cash for groceries or contractor payments, when Monica asked for transfers. Thousands of dollars. But the kicker was the consulting business. Monica had claimed she started a small consulting firm for art curation 2 years ago. She had asked me for $15,000 in startup capital. I gave it to her. She said she wasn't making a profit yet, which is why she couldn't contribute to the household. Mr. Henderson found the business registration. It existed, but he also found a secondary bank account linked to it. The account had a balance of $40,000. She wasn't broke. She was hoarding money, my money, in a secret escape fund while pleading poverty to get me to pay for Leo's braces. She was siphoning my generosity to build her own golden parachute. My doorbell rang. I checked the security camera feed on my phone. It was David. He looked awful. His suit was rumpled, likely slept in. His eyes were red. He was alone. I debated ignoring him, but the anger in my chest needed an outlet. I needed him to see the evidence. I walked to the door and opened it. I didn't unlock the screen door. "Aubrey," he croaked. He looked like a ghost. "Please let me in." "You have 5 minutes," I said, unlocking the screen. He stumbled in, smelling of stale wine and fear. He collapsed onto my sofa, the sofa he had once spilled red wine on and never offered to clean. "Monica is at her mother's," he said, staring at the floor. She says she's going to sue you for emotional distress, for abandonment." I laughed. Let her try. My lawyers would love to depose her about the art curation business. David's head snapped up. "What?" "You don't know?" I asked, walking to the table and picking up the printout Mr. Henderson had sent. "Of course you don't. She plays you just as hard as she plays me, David. You're not her partner, you're her hostage." I tossed the papers onto his lap. "What is this?" he asked, trembling. "That," I pointed, "is the bank statement for the business I funded. The business that makes no money. It has 40 grand in it, David. She's been skimming off the top of every check I wrote you for 2 years. When you were crying to me about not being able to afford the electric bill last winter, she had $10,000 sitting in that account." David stared at the paper. His hands shook so hard the paper rattled. He read the lines, the transfers, the dates. She told me we were drowning," he whispered. "She told me I was a failure because I couldn't provide. She said we needed you." "You didn't need me," I said coldly. "You needed a victim." "I didn't know, Aubrey," he sobbed, tears streaming down his face. "I swear to God I didn't know." "Ignorance is not a defense, David," I yelled, my voice finally cracking. "You watched her treat me like a servant. You laughed when Leo called me a wallet. You sat there and ate the steak I paid for while she mocked me." "I was scared," he shouted back, a pathetic defense. "She threatens to leave. She threatens to take Leo." "Well," I said, leaning down so I was eye level with him. "Now she has no reason to stay, does she?" The gravy train derailed. "So now you're going to see if she really loves you or if she just loved the lifestyle I provided." David looked at the paper again. The betrayal was sinking in. It wasn't just me she had scammed. She had emasculated him, lied to him, and stolen from the family pot while watching him beg his sister for scraps. "She's coming here," David said suddenly, looking at his watch. "She dropped me off. She went to park the car. She wanted me to soften you up before she came in to demand you turn the cards back on." I stood up straight. The adrenaline spiked again. "Good," I said. "Let her come." I walked over to the wall and adjusted the thermostat. "I have one more thing to show her," I said, "and I think the neighbors should hear this one." I went to the window and saw Monica marching up the walkway. She didn't look defeated. She looked vengeful. She was holding a stack of papers, probably the unpaid bills she expected me to cover. She had no idea I held the nuclear codes to her entire existence. The pound. Ing on the door wasn't a knock. It was an assault. It shook the frame, reverberating through the entryway like a judge's gavel demanding order in a chaotic courtroom. "Open this door, Aubrey. I know his car is in the driveway. I know you're poisoning him against me." Monica's voice was muffled by the wood, but the shrill hysteria cut right through. I looked at David. He was sitting on the edge of the sofa, the bank statements clenched in his hand so tightly his knuckles were white. He looked like a man waking up from a decade-long coma only to find his muscles had atrophied. "Let her in," he said. His voice was quiet, unrecognizable. It wasn't the voice of the passive brother I knew. It was the voice of something broken that was trying to reassemble itself into a weapon. I walked to the door. I didn't rush. I checked my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked calm. I looked like a woman who owned her house, her life, and her wallet. I unlocked the deadbolt and swung the door open. Monica stood there, chest heaving. She was wearing designer sunglasses even though it was overcast, a dramatic accessory for a dramatic woman. She pushed past me without an invitation, her heels clacking loudly on the hardwood. "There you are," she spat, zeroing in on David. She didn't even look at me. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing it is to have my card declined at the gas station? I had to call my mother, David. My mother. She asked why your sister cut us off. She thinks we're destitute." David didn't look up. He kept his eyes on the papers in his lap. "And you," she whirled on me, pointing a manicured finger at my chest. "You vindictive, petty little spinster. You think because you have money you can control us. You think you can just turn off the tap and we'll crawl? We are family. You have an obligation." "I have an obligation to myself," I said, leaning against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "And to the truth. Speaking of truth, Monica, how is the art curation business going?" She froze. It was microscopic, a tiny stutter in her breathing, but I saw it. She adjusted her sunglasses. "We are not talking about my career. We are talking about the fact that I have utility bills due tomorrow, and your name is on the account, so if they don't get paid, it's your credit score." "Actually," I said, "I removed my name from the utility accounts this morning. I called the power company. I told them I moved out 10 years ago, which I did, and that the current residents would be setting up new service. If you don't pay by Friday, the lights go out. But you can afford it, can't you?" "Of course we can't," she shrieked. "David makes peanuts. We rely on the household fund." "David," I said softly, "show her." David stood up. He rose slowly, unfolding his height until he towered over her. For years, he had made himself small to fit into the space she allowed him. Now, he filled the room. He held up the paper. "What is that?" Monica asked, squinting. "Chase Bank," David read, his voice trembling with rage. "Account ending in 4590. Registered to Monica V. Consulting LLC. Balance, $42,350. Monica's face went white. The color drained out of her so fast I thought she might faint. She snatched the sunglasses off her face, her eyes darting between me and David. Where did you get that? That's private, that's illegal." "It's forensic accounting," I said. "And since I funded the startup capital, I have every right to see the books. You stole from us, Monica. You cried poverty to get me to pay for Leo's tuition while you were sitting on a pile of cash." "It was for us," she yelled, switching tactics instantly from denial to justification. "It was a safety net. David, you know how unstable your job is. I was saving it for a rainy day, for Leo's college." "Really?" David asked. He flipped the page. "Is the Golden Horseshoe Casino a college? Because you withdrew $3,000 there last month. Is Saks Fifth Avenue a scholarship fund? $2,000 in handbags, Monica, while I was wearing shoes with holes in the soles." I have to maintain an image," she sputtered, backing away as David stepped forward. "For the business. You don't understand how the world works, David. You're just a worker bee. I manage the lifestyle." "You manage the lies," David roared. The sound was so loud it shook the windows. I had never heard my brother yell like that. It was the sound of 20 years of emasculation finally exploding. "You called my sister a wallet," David said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You taught our son to disrespect the only person who has ever actually cared about us. You laughed at her." "It was a joke," Monica screamed, looking around the room as if searching for an audience to agree with her. "Everyone is so sensitive. She's fine, look at her house. She has everything, why shouldn't she share? She has no one else." That W. As the line, that was the one she thought would hurt me. The implication that I was unlovable, and therefore, my money was the only value I had to offer. I walked over to the coffee table where the gray box, the one I had retrieved from the restaurant, was sitting. I picked it up. "You're right, Monica," I said. I have no one else to support, which means I have a lot of disposable income. I opened the box. I pulled out the ledger. Do you know what this is? I asked. She stared at it, breathing hard. This is the sum total of the last 10 years, I said. I kept receipts, every dinner, every car payment, every tuition check, every loan you forgot to pay back. I dropped the heavy binder onto the coffee table. It landed with a thud that sounded like a coffin closing. $740,000, I said. The silence that followed was absolute. David stared at the binder, horrified. Monica stared at it, calculating. That is how much you have cost me, I said. That is my retirement. That is a vacation home. That is a life. And last night when you laughed, when you called me a wallet, you decided that $740,000 wasn't enough. You wanted my dignity, too. Aubrey, please, Monica said, her voice suddenly small, wheedling. She tried to smile, but it looked like a rictus of fear. We can fix this. I'll apologize to Leo. We'll have a do-over dinner. Just, don't do this. Don't cut us off. David can't handle the mortgage alone. Then sell the house, I said. Sell she looked aghast. But it's my dream home, the school district. It's not your home, I corrected her. It's the bank's home. And since I'm no longer paying the extra principal payments, you'll be in foreclosure within 6 months unless you get a job. A real job, not art curation. David looked at his wife. He looked at the woman he had tried so hard to please, the woman who had turned him into a beggar in front of his own sister. Get out, David said. Monica blinked. What? Get out of Aubrey's house, David said. And when you get to our house, start packing. I'm done. I'm filing for divorce. You can't, she screeched. I'll take everything. I'll take Leo. You have $40,000 in a secret account, David said, his voice cold. And I have proof of financial infidelity, gambling, and fraud. You won't get a dime. And as for Leo, a judge is going to love hearing about how you used his tuition money for blackjack. Monica looked at me. She looked for the weakness, the soft heart, the Aunt Aubrey who always caved. She found only stone. You heard him, I said, pointing to the door. Figure it out. She let out a sound of pure frustration, a scream that was half tantrum, half defeat. She stomped to the door, threw it open, and marched out. But the show wasn't over. My neighbors, Mrs. Gable and Mr. Henderson, ironically, no relation to the pie, were out gardening. They stopped. They watched. Monica, realizing she had an audience, tried to regain her composure, but tripped on the bottom step, stumbling onto the concrete. She scrambled up, her sunglasses askew, and ran to her car. She peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching, leaving a cloud of exhaust and the ruin of her marriage behind her. I stood in the doorway and watched her go. I took a deep breath of the fresh air. It smelled like rain. It smelled like freedom. The fallout was swift, brutal, and entirely necessary. David didn't go back to the house that night. He stayed in my guest room for 3 weeks. For the first time in 20 years, we were just brother and sister. No transactions, no begging, just coffee in the morning and long talks in the evening where we deconstructed the toxic architecture of his marriage. The divorce was ugly, as predicted. Monica tried to play the victim. She went on Facebook and wrote long, vague posts about betrayal and toxic in-laws. She tried to rally the family friends. But I had the receipts, literally. When her lawyer tried to claim spousal support based on David's income, my lawyer, a shark I hired to represent David as a final gift, presented the forensic accounting of her secret fund and the gambling debts. The judge was not amused. Monica didn't get alimony. She got a lecture on fiscal responsibility. They had to sell the house. The market was hot, so they walked away with a little equity, but half of Monica's share went immediately to paying off the credit card debt she had racked up in her own name once I stopped paying the bills. She moved into a small apartment across town. She had to get a job as a receptionist at a dental office. I heard through the grapevine that she hates it. She hates having to answer to a boss. She hates not being the queen. As for Leo, that was the hardest part. He was angry at first. He blamed me for ruining his life because he couldn't go to the expensive camp or get the PS5. He was a child repeating hi. S mother's poison. But David stepped up. For the first time, he parented. He sat Leo down and explained, without malice but with absolute clarity, exactly how money worked. He showed him the budget. He showed him what things cost. One Saturday, about 3 months after the birthday dinner, David brought Leo over. Leo looked different. He was wearing regular sneakers, not the limited edition ones I used to buy. He looked humbler. "Aunt Aubrey," he said, looking at his shoes. "I'm sorry I called you a wallet. Dad explained that was mean, and that you worked hard for that money." I felt a lump in my throat. I knelt down so I was eye level with him. "Thank you, Leo. I appreciate that. I love you, you know. I didn't stop paying because I stopped loving you. I stopped paying because I needed your mom and dad to learn how to be adults." He nodded, not fully understanding, but getting the gist. "Dad says we have to budget for pizza tonight." I laughed. "Pizza sounds good, but tell your dad, tonight I'm treating, just tonight." David smiled. It was a real smile, one that reached his eyes. He looked 10 years younger without the weight of Monica's expectations crushing him. I didn't fully reopen the Bank of Aubrey. David pays his own rent now. He pays his own car insurance. He drives a used sedan, not a luxury SUV, but he has his dignity back. As for me, I finally took that trip to Cabo, but I didn't rent a villa for a family of 4. I booked a solo suite at an adults-only resort. I remember sitting on the balcony on my first morning there, watching the sunrise over the Sea of Cortez. The coffee was hot, the ocean was blue, and my phone was silent. No notifications of overdrafts. No texts asking for a quick favor. I opened my banking app, just out of habit. The numbers were higher than they had ever been, but it wasn't the number that mattered. It was the fact that every single cent of it belonged to me. I had lost a sister-in-law, but I had regained my brother, and more importantly, I had regained myself. The box labeled "Figure It Out" had been the best gift I ever gave them. It forced them to build their own lives. And in doing so, it gave me back mine.